My name's Charlie Mattox. I live in Pawleys Island. I'm originally from Virginia. I was going to the University of Richmond. I volunteered for the Air Corps Cadets. I didn't want to particularly wallow around in the mud in the infantry. I was going to school. They let me finish that semester of fall of '44. I went in January of '45. I took basic training at Biloxi, Mississippi, which I will always remember, the thunderstorms and the heat. We took basic training, for, I was studying to be, I went into pilot, bombardier, navigator training, but they could see the wall was winding down in Europe. They had all the officers, all of those they thought they needed, so I ended up a top third gunner on a B-24 out in the Pacific Theater. We took our training in Muroc Dry Lakes, which was out in California, which was in the desert. Our first assignment was Angwa, which is a very small island out in the Palaia Islands. We were bombing Yap, which was a big Japanese base at that time. We moved up to Okinawa. We went in the Air Force, but everywhere we went on Liberty ships. And the Liberty ships at the equator with no fans was quite an experience, a little warm. Okinawa, we were bombing Japan to soften up for the invasion, I assume. Some things I remember about Okinawa, when it rained, it was mud. When it didn't rain, it was dust. Rats, we had millions of rats. You wake up at night and feel rats running all around, all over you. Another thing I remember about Okinawa, we were there in the typhoon. All of the mess halls, everything blew away. They had to drop us K-rash. This was right after the war ended. But the only time I got in a hole was the night the war ended, because every gun I think on the island was shooting. The air was full of flak. It was quite a evening when the war ended. Also, I remember every night about the middle of the movie there'd be one little Japanese plane come over. Every light on the island, every gun on the island would shoot at that thing. Never shot it down. You could hear him coming, pop, 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 just like, I don't know whether you ever saw the MASH episode when the plane came over. But I always remember we named the Betty. After Okinawa, we had 10 men on a crew. 5 of us came home, 5 of us went to Japan. We all had all the battle stars, all of that necessary to come home. We were qualified to come home. Well, I was one of the lucky ones that went to Japan. So you can imagine the mood that we were in. We wanted to come home. We didn't want to go to, but I was one of the first Americans that got to Japan when the war was over. They were scared of us when we got there. They'd see us coming, they'd run and get across the street. But nobody knew why we were there in Japan. We laid around the old airplane hangar for about a month. Then somebody decided to make MPs out of us. Well, that was that made some very interesting experiences being an MP. But the Japs gave us all special consideration because they figured we would protect them, which. In Japan, they have the walls are built through the houses, and those guys would drink that sake, and they'd sit there and bet where they could fly around the barracks, and they'd get even money that they could. They'd go crazy drinking that stuff, but they'd come down these old dark alleys at night with none of them ever got shot, cut, anything. It'd been so easy, but that was an interesting point to me. Another interesting thing. I flew over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and it was total devastation by the standards that we had. The biggest thing we had was a 2,000-pound bomb, which had did some damage, but it was unbelievable. And I guess that was a pop cracker by today's standard. After I think in February of '46, I came home. Came back into Seattle, where we had shipped out of. We this was in like February. All for some reason, all the railroads were washed out. I had a lady friend in Santa Monica that I knew before I went overseas. So I was going back to school that fall, so I asked the man to give me the orders to get out of the Air Force in California, which I did. And I spent some time in California. And then I hitchhiked home to Virginia, which today I wouldn't try to hitchhike to the other side of town, but that was a different time and that was a different world. So that was pretty much my experience in the Air Force. Yes, sir. I had 4 officers and 6 enlisted men. And to my knowledge, there's 3 of us still living. The co-pilot, the ball turret gunner, and myself. We've kept in touch over the years with Christmas cards. That's about the extent of it. Oh yeah, same crew. Oh yeah, we trained together, and we had quite a group. We had a Jewish fellow from New York. We had a Irishman from Philadelphia. He had me, a Southerner. We had another guy from Detroit. We had a Minnesota guy. The navigator was from Minnesota. The pilot was from Oregon. The bombardier was from Hawaii. We had quite a cross. We got along fine. We had a good group. I think I said I know I had the bombardier that just died last year. He stayed in. He stayed in the Air Force. But I know I was a top 3 grade when I got out, and they had this deal: if you signed up all these papers, you could get a reserve commission. Well, I got those papers, but I didn't send them in. Well, you know where I would have been? I'd been right back in Korea, because the reserves were the first things that went to Korea. When we first got to Japan, well, you know, in those days, everything was still segregated. And, well, I don't know exactly how to describe it, but they had houses there that entertained the troops. And at 10 o'clock at night, we had to go through there and get the troops out. They had these long buildings, and, you know, with where they entertained the troops, and that was quite an experience, getting those guys out of there at 10 o'clock at night. That was well, we used to play tag with the Jeeps. We, you know, just hit somebody and take off down the road, because we weren't in law, you know, nobody was going to bother us. But we had to patrol the highway out there with the trucks. And we always carried, 2 of us always went together. We carried a Thompson submachine gun along with our pistols. And those guys, we'd stop them out there for speed, and we had to hold a machine gun on them. I don't know why they'd get so upset, but boy, they didn't like to get a ticket out there driving those 6x6s. So, and I said, whatever the Japs had, you know, the best beer or whatever, they gave it to us, or saw that we got it because they wanted the MPs. They figured we'd look out for them. Well, nobody bothered the Japs. I mean, nobody. The only thing maybe they used the street for the bathroom, the men did, and somebody might kick a fellow in the butt if he's doing that. But far as really beating up on the Japs and everything, and they soon realized that. Well, you see, we were lucky compared to Europe, because most of the time we were flying over water. But when we got over land, we always got ACAC, and we always got fighters. So I can remember one time this guy came right straight at us. He must have been that close to us. I can see the expression on his face. And we may have shot him down. It was hard to tell, because it looked like he just kept going right down. But what I said earlier, what they'd do, they'd get out here out of range, and all of a sudden one guy would sneak in on you, or they'd get up above you and drop those phosphorus bombs. But they still had, I know what a Zero looks like. I've seen them up close. But I said those days they had to get the guns, and, you know, it all happened real quickly, because what they call, you know, he had to fly like this, either come straight at you or come down at you. It's not like it is today where they can shoot you down 20 miles away. But I said, when you see those traces, you start thinking about all the bad things, about all the bad things you ever did. But you see those things walking towards you. I know we bombed Kobe. We were just, I can't remember all the targets. I know one thing, you never brought those bombs back. You dropped them in the ocean, you did something else. One guy, I know, I forget one day, guy didn't drop them, he couldn't get rid of them or something. And we had a mess there on the landing strip because all of them went off when he landed, and it killed people. Yeah, we bombed Tokyo. And that was interesting. As we were MPs, we'd take jeeps and just ride around through the countryside just to see and we had bombed or shelled practically everything. We had, you know, we hadn't hardly missed a thing. Every house built and everything else. So there wasn't a whole lot left. And when they dropped the atomic bomb, it was really, I said that was just total devastation for miles compared to what we had in those days. I thought it saved my life. I mean, I'm not be saying, yeah, bless old Harry's heart, as far as I'm concerned. And don't think they would have dropped it on us if they had it. I mean, they wouldn't have hesitated for a moment. But it saved thousands of lives. And if you to see, well, don't get me started on him, but MacArthur was not my favorite person. But he still wanted to invade Japan. MacArthur did, you know. He didn't. He was against Truman dropping the thing. I mean, that would have been thousands, hundreds of thousands of people killed, in my opinion. But as far as I'm concerned, bless old Harry's heart, because I was flying a mission every other day, getting shot at every other day. Now you sitting here, and you know, but it's different when you see that black puff out there, that airplane, you know, shooting at you. So. No, I think it saved a lot of lives because it killed a lot of folks too. And the worst part of it is too, it killed a lot of American prisoners. No, you know, I'd do it to fight for my country. If that, you know, I'd fight for my country, but no, you know, the military life didn't suit me. I'm too independent. I don't want nobody telling me when to get up and go to bed and what to eat. As far as fighting for my country, I was willing to do that. I had no qualms about that. Well, then I spent a number of years with the Ralston Purina Company in sales, and then I retired from a large dairy cooperative. We sold milk in the 18 southeastern states. Actually, I was working for 8,000 dairy farmers. So a dairy farmer's got all he can do to get the milk out of a cow. Somebody's got to sell it, collect for him, lobby in Washington, keep the quality up, work with the truckers. That was what I was about, what I retired from. But I spent a number of years with the Ralston Purina Company in the animal feed division. Yes, sir. Okay. Phosphorus. Yeah. And if I say phosphorus, if it hits the top of your hand, it comes at the bottom. The same thing with metal. Yeah. Yeah, these things would blow, you know, I don't know how big area but they had a time fuse on them off proximity. I don't know, they fired them from the ground, you know. I can't remember the details of it, but the Japs had guns that were good to like 8,000, 9,000 feet up, and then there was a little dead space in there that the guns weren't very effective, and then you got high on that. So we tried to fly in the zone there where the guns were sort of neutralized when, you know, in ACAC. Well, I got there in September, as soon as the war was over, as soon as the typhoon was over, and I left in February, so I wasn't there that long. But it changed a lot, you know, as far as the Japs being afraid of us or anything like that. But when we first got that. The other thing about the Japs in the Second World War, they didn't like flyers. I mean, anybody aviators because of the bombing. And it wasn't good news if they got you because off you came your head. That's what they did to the, but that was another thing that, of course they did a lot of things that wasn't by the rules, the Japanese fighting, but they particularly didn't like airmen. They yeah, oh yeah. Well, you know, the Germans though, they didn't kill them. I mean, they captured them. As I have read, you know, they sort of played by the rules, but the Japs didn't have any rules. No, I'd say I'd like to put in the plug for the B-24s because the B-29s got all the credit, but we were getting shot at and bombing, you know, we were flying missions. Well, I wasn't flying every day, but I was flying about every other day. But our group off Okinawa was flying every day, bombing Japan, trying to soften it up for the invasion. But it was an interesting experience, and I say, you asked me if I'd do it again. I'd do it again, fight for my country, but I wouldn't do it just to be doing something. I'd rather be playing golf or something.
You didn't do it for the experience.
No, and I never saw those Polynesian beauties they talk about it there either. We were flying missions every other day getting shot at. They were still shooting at us. Yeah. And well, even in those days, it was probably 10 or 12 hours of flying to get up there and get back. Well, you know, always something could happen to those airplanes. When we were in training, we had a motor catch-all fire. It just wasn't our time because I can remember those flames licking back past the waist window. And he feathered the thing and it went out. But how that thing did get in that gas line and blow up, we were somewhere down over Texas or something flying. So that was another thing overseas. We had better airplanes than we had here in training in the United States. Because you'd bring back your airplane, it'd be a checklist page long. Next crew would get in and fly it. Over there, we had their own crew chief for the airplane. That was their airplane they took care of. So we had a whole lot better airplanes to fly in combat than we did in training. Oh, it'd be maybe an hour. That's depending on where we were going on Japan. I remember one time they briefed us and said, go to the Saddle Islands, with a group of islands off of Japan called the Saddle Islands. Said, when you get there, turn left and go wherever you're going. Said, there's no ack-ack on Saddle Island. Well, somebody didn't get the message. They nearly blew us out of the sky. A lot of golf and had a lot of good days on the golf course, but.
You have family?
Yeah, I had, I've been married 3 times. I got 5 kids. So you just got to do it till you get it right. So I think this last one's a keeper. Huh?